Hello everyone. Welcome to this EUA webinar. My name is Stefan Berkmans, and I'm the Director for Research Innovation at the European University Association. Um, what I'd like to start doing today is, of course, start by saying this is the launch, actually, of the EUA Green Deal Roadmap for Universities. But in that sense, what we would like to know is who's attending. And what we'd like to know is we're going to do a first poll because we'd like to know from you, the attendees, where your institution actually is on the road to sustainability. So, A, you can choose you are in a phase of exploration at this stage. B, you are at this stage partially implementing plans or strategies that you have on this. C, you are actually already fully implementing your plans and strategies. And D here would be for some of you maybe that you don't know. So I know we're only just starting, but I'm starting to see responses coming. Wonderful, great. So we can see that the majority for now, and I'm going to wait just a little bit longer, but yeah, the majority here of those who have answers so far are indeed partially implementing their plans or their strategy. So that's good to know. And then we've got a few who are in the exploration phase. So good. So I think it's going to be interesting for all of you there to be with us today. So let me start right away then by focusing now, and I think we can close the poll at this stage. There you go. So let me give you a little bit of background to the roadmap, because I don't think I will need to convince you that the green transition is highly complex. And of course, it goes well beyond climate and environmental issues. Of course, it is about energy, about water, soil, food, but also it's about inequalities. We've seen a range of vulnerabilities emerge, actually, both in terms of gender, ethnicity, or health, for example. So that's why we think that universities are in quite a unique place and have a unique role to play to help address those issues. And that's, of course, both because they are the producers, but also the steward of knowledge, a knowledge that they're, of course, able to connect also with societal challenges. But not just that, universities are also a place where you can bring together the researchers, the innovators, but also the public and the private sectors. And importantly, the surroundings, the ecosystem, the communities in which universities are embedded. And so that's why we believe that the European Green Deal actually is a good policy framework that can help integrate the scientific, the educational, but also the institutional dimensions that universities can contribute to the green transition. So let me move to the next one. That's why we were highly disappointed, to be honest, when we saw the European Commission initial plans for the Green Deal, because in there, universities were pretty much absent. Our sector was not in there. That's why last year we published a university vision for the European Green Deal, because we wanted to make sure that it was understood that universities were not just service providers there to transfer skill and information, that they needed to be involved actually in the co-creation of solutions. Universities are critical stakeholders in the Green Deal. What came with this vision is also the realization that we as universities, it requires that we as universities uh, do something about it. So it's really action from the part of the sector to transform itself. What we also realized developing this vision was that not all institutions are placed the same way. They're not equal when it comes to the implementation. And that was also a very important element. So that's why, because of those differences, that we decided that it was well time to have a roadmap for universities when it came to the Green Deal. What we have in the roadmap, to give you a quick overview, is really an outline of different processes and interventions that can help universities boost their impact and visibility when it comes to achieving climate neutral, environmentally sustainable, and socially equitable Europe. Also in the roadmap, we have EUA's core concern, which is solidarity, cooperation, and sharing between its members, between the universities. So that's a very important element for us at EUA. What we also identify in the roadmap is that there are specificity of local path of sustainability. I think I've said that before, but here I say it again. Not all universities will be with the same starting point nor endpoint, and they will have different timelines, timetables, to be able to do this proposed transformation. Another important element that we stressed in the roadmap is that, of course, there's a crucial part for the, some would say, long needed challenges of the sectors and of academia in general, of our reliance, overall reliance even on quantitative goals. What we see is, unfortunately, that the differences between universities when it comes, for example, Green Deal, is not well reflected in the rankings or the metrics that are used to assess performance of universities, for example. But also this spirit actually doesn't play so well for the learning between institutions, where we can learn about the lessons, both the successes that usually are put forward, but also the failures that more often should be shared. So we believe that there should be an approach here that is based on values, on ethics, on mutual learning, but also on collective reflection, rather than just focusing on competition. And through this collaboration between universities, we think it could foster a more meaningful mobilization of our sector for the Green Deal. So the roadmap has four overarching themes. Let's be clear, they are all somewhat intertwined. There's clearly connections, and you will be aware of that. But the four themes are, first, one focused on research and innovation. The second one goes into education and students. The third one on staff and operations. And finally, the fourth one is about public engagement and societal impact. For each of those themes, the document, and we don't have the time to go in details today, but I would urge you to go to the document and look at it. But the document goes into the state of play and highlights some of the challenges for each of those themes. Then it offers objectives as well as recommended actions for the universities, but also for the EUA. What we don't have in those are pre-specified targets. I think it's important, as I said before, all universities are not in the same situation, so we cannot actually prescribe the ends for a very complex process of transformation for the university and for the whole sector. What we've done instead is provide good practice examples from across Europe to really give examples for the possible ways of enacting meaningful institutional changes. What we hope now is that this roadmap will serve as an inspiration, but also a template for universities. And this is both, of course, to make contribution to the Green Deal as universities, but also to become examples of sustainable communities themselves, universities, but also beyond their communities in which they are. At this stage, what we would like to know now also with another poll is from those four themes, which ones do you think, at least from yourself or for universities, which ones are the most important? Is it A, research and innovation? Is it B, education and students? C, staff and operations? Or D, public engagement and societal impact? So for you, the participants, where do you think yourself, or your university stands when it's on this road to sustainability, on this roadmap to the Green Deal? Which one would be for you the most important? So I'm waiting for a few votes here. Okay, education and students seems to come here on top, followed very right after by research and innovation. Good. It always takes a little time to update, so I'll wait for one more set of votes if that changes. I hope that's going to be updating soon. No? Okay, we'll keep it there, but please keep on voting because of course we will have, there you go. So we're now at 62 response. It's still education and students on top, followed indeed by research and innovation. Interestingly, it's after that, it's public engagement and societal impact. And then finally, We are at 17% for staff and operations. Yeah, I use the opportunity to say that, of course, you will see on the screen that on the right you have the polls, but you also have the Q&A and the chat. The Q&A will allow you to ask questions to the panelists and the presenters. So please feel free to, at any time during this webinar, go to the Q&A and ask questions. I have a colleague who will be monitoring those questions, and we will be, of course, putting those questions to the panelist and the presenter. So now I'll continue with my presentation after this poll. Thank you for sharing that. We'll keep in mind the education bit. Again, as I said, we don't have the time to go into full detail of the roadmap, and I would urge you to go and read the document. But here, what I have on this slide is just some objectives and recommendations that we've highlighted in there for universities, but also for EUA. And you can see in the first one that, yes, indeed, the Green Deal will require alignment between universities. So universities will have to work with our universities. But beyond that, universities will need to be able also to develop common implementation roadmaps with a much wider audience. We're talking about, of course, stakeholders that are in their ecosystem, but also beyond. So that's the first one. A second one would be the fact that innovation impact methodology should be adopted. Yes, they have to be about technical factors, but not just. Success needs to be also measured with local societal factors when it comes to the implementation of new solutions. In terms of training, there needs to be training in knowledge brokerage made very widely available to the researchers, because that will allow them to do co-creation and then transfer and valorize the knowledge at really the interface between the science and the policy. A fourth one is about public engagement and policy input. Of course, this will be expected by people at universities, but the only way to expect them to do public engagement and policy input is if it is valued in career assessment, whereas today it is not very much or not very often. Another one is about needing a very robust governance of interdisciplinary programs. And in this case, it could be, for example, by appointing an institutional lead or an institutional champion to define activities that will bring the different parties together that have a shared interest. Another one is to have actually more partnership and exchange between the hemisphere. So here we're talking about global north and global south that come and meet to have mutual learning together. That's also an important element. Another one is the fact that sustainability strategies should also have very clear outlines of the roles and the responsibilities. And this is both across the institution itself, your universities, but also going beyond. And this would indicate actually in the practice on a day-to-day basis what is expected, and would also incorporate direct student involvement in managing those strategies. And then finally, we also have, in this case, the fact that institutional growth and higher student numbers should actually not, should be balanced with the awareness that, of course, this will have an impact on the surrounding communities. You cannot just expand your campus without having an impact, and this should be taken into account, of course. So I would not want to finish without, of course, thanking the task and finish group that helped us develop with the Secretariat of the EUA our roadmap for universities when it comes to the Green Deal. And we're lucky to have with us today Douglas Halliday, who was the chair of this task and finish group. Douglas is a professor of physics at Durham Universities, and he was the director of the Durham Energy Institute. What I'd like to finish with now is what's coming next and what will be happening today. First, we'll go into some showcasing of what's happening at universities. And in this case, we'll focus on Spanish universities because we have with us Maria Sarabia Alegria. She's the executive secretary of the Spanish Rectors Conference, CRUE, for the Sectoral Commission for Sustainability. She's also the Vice Rector for Institutional Relations and Coordination of the University of de Alcalá. That will be followed by a short Q&A. So again, keep in mind you have the Q&A possibility there. We will follow that with a panel discussion with the leading question on how to now implement the roadmap. Douglas Halliday will be moderating the panel discussion. And on the panel, we'll have as panelists Reinhild Vögeler. She's a senior fellow at Bruegel and a full professor at KU Leuven here in Belgium. We will also have Owen Kinnerans with us. He's a policy officer for strategy, policy coordination, and urban transition at DG Research and Innovation from the European Commission. And finally, on the panel, we'll also have Maria that I've just introduced. So without further ado, now I'd like to hand over the floor to you, Maria.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen. Just 1 second, I'm going to share my screen. Yeah. Right, so I'm going to
perfect. Sorry, go ahead. That's all fine. Thank you.
It's fine?
Great. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about showcasing Spanish universities' contribution to the Green Deal. Firstly, I think it should be interesting if we talk about us, about CRUE Universidades Españolas. It's an organization established in 1994. It's a non-profit association that groups a total of 76 Spanish universities. So 50 are public and 26 are private. So can you check all the data, the big data that we have, trying to understand how is the network of universities in Spain? We works following this graph that you have there. So we have sectorial commissions, are chaired by a rector, who is designated by the president and conferred by the General Assembly, and are constituted by one representative from each university that is designated by the corresponding rector. Within each commission, working groups are established with specific aims. So we are a big network, but we try to create the commitments in the main General Assembly, and after that we try to use all the commitments in each university. So our president of the CRUE Sectorial Commission for Sustainability is the Professor Manuel Pérez Mateos. He is rector of the University of Burgos. I'm the executive secretariat of this commission, and this commission, it was set up in 2009. It was due to the impetus of several universities, because we are very interested in the environmental management, in advances in the environmentalization of the university community, and work on risk prevention, etc., even trying to promote best practice. We have 7 working groups. You can see all of them. We have biodiversity and climate, sustainability in university teaching, sustainable human development and participation, involvement of the student body, sustainable university building and urban planning, university sustainability assessment, university and sustainability mobility, and finally, healthy universities. All the groups are working during all the year, and different universities are working together in the commitments of every year. I thought that it should be nice if we talk about the first commitment of this 2023. It was about university and city towards climate neutrality. So in this issue, we try to develop a few things about, for example, the transdisciplinary research about the European Climate Mission, even mechanisms based on shared interest, spaces for debate and experimentation on an urban scale, or new forms of governance. Other commitment of this 2023 is biodiversity and climate change, a challenge for the university. In this case, we discuss about to be active agents in the energy transition. We talk about generate and transmit rigorous scientific information on the climate transition and the biodiversity crisis, advance in the naturalization of university campuses, proceed to calculate and record the carbon footprint generated by all its activities, and even we talk about energy efficiency actions in university buildings. And the third one and final is the university culture and sustainable heritage. So this issue is interesting in the case of our university, Alcalá, and in this commitment, all the crew, we decide to promote equal access for all people to culture, sports, and knowledge, to value and preserve the knowledge and cultural and patrimonial values, sustainable development, co-responsibility in its conservation and maintenance, the role of culture, and finally, we try to involve the university community in all the designs about cultural and sport activities. So in the case of University of Alcalá, we would like to present to the audience how is the type of my university. So it's the first Spanish university in the Green Metric World Ranking. UNESCO declared our university and the historic site of the city of Alcalá de Henares a World Heritage Site on 2 December 1998. So the last Saturday, it was our birthday. And it's again ranked as one of the most environmentally committed university in the Green Metric ranking. So following this idea, I had this presentation. It's only a few minutes trying to understand how is the link between sustainability and heritage and university. So in just 1 second.
The University of Alcalá was founded by Cardinal Cisneros in 1499. Among its former alumni, it boasts some of the major names of Spanish culture. In 1988, the university, together with the historical quarter of the city of Alcalá de Henares, was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Alcalá de Henares is 30 kilometers from Madrid, birthplace of Cervantes. The city is alive with the activities of the university and offers an exceptional environment for the pursuit of academic growth, as well as numerous venues for enjoying and advancing culture, the arts, and knowledge.
An extensive public transport network connects the university to Madrid and communicates its three campuses: the historical campus, located in the heart of Alcalá de Henares, the Science and Technology campus on the city outskirts, and the Guadalajara campus in the city of the same name.
The historical campus is the place for the humanities, social sciences, and architecture. The historical campus is also a hive of cultural activity, offering training in different areas of the arts such as theater, music, and dance.
Every year, the university's ancient assembly hall, the Paraninfo Universitario, plays host to the most important Spanish literary award ceremony, the Cervantes Prize. The Paraninfo is also the place where the King of Spain Prize for Human Rights is awarded.
The Science and Technology campus is the site of the Advanced Technical School for Computer Science and the Advanced Polytechnic School, where the engineering degrees are taught. Here too are taught health and life sciences such as medicine, nursing, physiotherapy, pharmacy, biomedical sciences, and physical activity and sports science.
The Prince of Asturias University Hospital is located next to the Faculty of Medicine. Last but not least, the Science and Technology campus is also where biology, chemistry, and environmental science are taught.
The University of Alcalá is firmly committed to research as the engine of innovation and change. Its Juan Carlos I Botanical Garden is a leading edge research and sustainability project, as well as a teaching resource of interest to university students, school children, and the general public alike. Ranked among the best Spanish universities in terms of research, the The University of Alcalá embodies research quality in all fields of knowledge and is leader in biomedicine and biotechnology.
The presence on the campus of a Science and Technology Park also facilitates the development of business research activities and knowledge transfer. The campus is also home to the Sports Service, which offers a good number of sporting activities throughout the year.
Right. So, trying to understand how is our university, we will finally explain what we did about that. So, in the case of the geothermal plant, you can check it in the photograph that will serve the air conditioning system for the new multi-purpose and modular building, and even we can this geothermal exchange installation carry out for the air conditioner of the building. We even can install the smart lighting in all the campus, and we try to follow the projects about energy efficiency project for replacement of the stereo lighting. And even we can use a cogeneration plant about the process of high efficiency trigeneration plant, and we try to reduce and generate incomes for the institution and trying, of course, minimizing greenhouse gases. So, and finally, more than 20 years developing sustainable development policies. Just only in 2003, we are going to invest 4 millions on solar panels, 12 millions on sustainable buildings, and at the end we have 100 electric vans and plug-in hybrid vehicles, and we use double chargers. So I hope that all the explanation about our policy in current universities, and even in the case of University of Alcalá, can help to debate and improve our ideas. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So that's off to a good start. Good to see what's happening in Spain and concretely also at your university. Let me go. We have a few minutes for a question, and there are quite a lot of questions arriving already. You talked about those initiatives and those commissions that you have within CRUE. One of the questions that I see here is about, are these activities in Spain seen as self-standing, or are they part actually of the United Nations SDG related efforts?
Yeah, I think at the end we work together and we need the improvement of different institutions. So I think we talk about how is the network between the UN, CDJ, and our CRUE universities policy. So I think we try to do ourselves, but following the ideas of the world around.
Thank you. And I see a lot of questions, by the way, that are coming that will go also to the panelists. But here I have one much more concrete. It was one of the first, and it got some votes. What about the travel policy? How do you balance European collaboration and the greenhouse gas reduction? Are there some good practice to enhance online exchange? Do you have any experience of that at your universities or within the CRUE Commission? Are you talking about that?
Yeah, so for us, it's really difficult to follow this travel policy, even, even in any business is even difficult. And in the case of the university, we try to measure the travel policy inside of our campuses. For that reason, we use the mobility policies, and we recommend to our students and professors that they use or try to control the emissions of the cars or even the public mobility. But I think we are going in the right way, and we will be better after all the policies are arranged.
Okay, thank you. And I see here questions that will also go potentially to the other panelists, but one concretely maybe at your university, and I hope we can ask this question also after, even if I display it, but to what extent do you in this case, see the role of universities as green living labs. The person here, Annette, says that in my research, I've noticed that academic care deeply that their university practice what they preach rather than use sustainability to cut costs.
Wow. I think, like academic, if I have to reply to something, to the research, I need to check the research before. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think that the universities, we are a big labs, of course, and we try to practice green activities. Even in University of Alcalá, we have several activities close to the green living. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if practice they preach rather than use sustainability to cut costs. I'm not sure.
And then finally, I'm going to ask you a question that I think we're going to ask to the others on the panel. Jesus here says that, what do the panelists, so that will include you, but maybe with your experience again at your university and with the work you're doing at CRUE, what sort of importance do you give to the EUA's roadmap of 4 pillars? So the question I asked to the audience, I'm putting to you. So is it, in this case, research innovation? Is it education students that you would put first? Is it staff in operation? Or is it about societal impact? Is there one that you think is more important than another?
So you want that I choose between mom and dad, and I think we cannot, because at the end, the life is a complete amount of activities and actions and policies, and we teach and we research and we try to create commitments on the environment and sustainability and everything. I think it's not possible to separate all the boxes
Okay.
about.
Not one single priority, but all are important, which means that at least we get the impression that we got it right. We got the right pillars in there, right themes in there. Great, thank you very much. Let me check one more time because I think the other questions indeed go for all the panelists, and we will ask those at the next stage. So, Maria, I now thank you very much for this, and it's not over for you because you're now going to be joining the panel. So I call on Douglas. Douglas Halliday, as I said, is from Durham University. More importantly for us at the EUA, Durham very kindly chaired for the last 2 years a task and finish group that first delivered the vision for universities in the Green Deal, and now this roadmap. So Douglas, you have 3 panelists with you. We've already met one, and as I mentioned, we have another representative coming from Bruegel, but also a professor at KU Leuven, Reinil Vögeler. And we also have a representative coming from the European Commission, Owen. So I think I'd like to hand over to you now because my work is done for today, and I much look forward to hearing you and hearing from the panelists. So Douglas, the webinar is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Stefan. It's a real pleasure to be here today to talk about this really exciting roadmap. I mean, in essence, if one thinks about a roadmap, its purpose is to help you to navigate a journey from a start point to an end point. And I think one of the really important things we realized in developing this roadmap is that every university is at a different starting point based on the experience they've had, based on where they are in terms of thinking about the issues in this document. So it's a real pleasure today to have these 3 colleagues to discuss the roadmap. And I think we all recognize it's an extremely important, but also an extremely wide-ranging challenge. The Green Deal covers energy, food, water, health, well-being, just, equitable societies. And I think, as we also heard, it also encourages us to think about the kinds of societies that we want to build in the future, whilst also recognizing the importance of heritage and culture that we'd heard about in the previous presentation. So what I'd like to do is to invite each of our panelists maybe to give some thoughts and reflections on some questions that we have prepared in advance that will give us an opportunity really to discuss some of the key points. And the first question is about collaboration. Clearly, universities are large organizations with a very broad remit, with lots of embedded expertise. But I think within the roadmap document, there is a very clear exhortation that universities should think about and reflect on how they might develop a broader range of partnerships, both internally and externally, and how the universities might follow that up. So perhaps, Maria, I could go to you first. I mean, do you have anything more that you would like to say based on your experience of developing these kinds of partnerships through your network in Spain?
Yeah, I think CRUE is a very huge experience on how can the universities can share the ideas or policies. But I think we try to improve our activities together, and depends of the university, the experiences are really different. So for that reason, I can show you the short video about how is our university, because you can understand that it's different that another university in the north or in the south. But I think it's necessary to collaborate to understand the differences about that.
Thank you. And Reinhild, what views might you have on how universities might collaborate, the types of organizations that might collaborate, and what benefits that might bring to developing?
Yeah, thanks for giving me the floor. So perhaps it would also be good to point out from the start, so I'm an economist and I study the Green Deal more from the innovation policy component. That will also help to explain a bit the kind of angles that I will bring into the discussion. And I think it's clear that we would need science and innovation in order to deal with the Green Deal, but that this is really very complex because we're dealing, like Stefan also said, with multitudes of objectives. It's not only about decarbonization, it's also about creating economic growth and jobs, and also the social dimension here, and very, very multiple instruments that we need here, and that makes innovation policy really complicated. We've studied that a bit also on what has worked or what could work or not, and public-private partnerships, like you identify, are indeed very important. And then the question is, what role would universities play in these public-private partnerships within this very complex innovation policy landscape for green? And I would like to identify three really unique roles that universities play in there. One is, because it's so complex, this policy design, these multiple instruments, multiple actors that you need to coordinate and need to stir in the right direction, we still need to learn very fast what works or what not in terms of policy. And that means that policymakers should be willing to experiment, but that we should also learn from these experiments as best and as fast as we can. And that's already one dimension that for which we would need way more research, is from social sciences perspective then, is to make sure that we guide these policy experiments so that they are done in a scientifically sound fashion and are also will feed as quickly as possible into the policy design. That's a call for more research also in evaluating, monitoring and designing policy instruments here. A second important contribution that universities should play in these policy designs, public-private policy designs, is that since there will be way more direction in terms of certain technologies that are clean, that will be chosen or not, or science technology solutions, so there's way more directedness, way more top-down. I think it's also very important that we do get the balance right between top-down and bottom-up here, and that there is also still enough support for potential solutions that research can bring that are not yet on the policy radar here, particularly also because the policy radar also is asking for quick and easy and solutions to implement that are ready to use, so with high TRLs here. So I also want to really emphasize that universities should still also support the right environment for bottom-up proposals that may not yet fit into these top-down, but could be the next generation breakthroughs here. And if we don't get that mix right, we might actually be missing out on some of the solutions that actually might be the important breakthroughs that we would need in future. And then finally, but that has already been raised before here, if we look at the biggest barrier that companies face when they need to adopt new clean technologies is access to skills here. So in that respect, also the role of universities as teaching and as for forming these new skills is a very important component. And that includes also the retraining of skills here. Because of the demography, we will also have to retrain and make sure that we get the transition right. So these skills are also very important. And for that, again, public-private partnerships will be very important also, because it's the skills that are needed in society to get the transition will have to be formed.
Yep. Great, thank you very much. Some really interesting ideas there, particularly about the policy and instruments and innovation, which we might come back to in our later discussions. But I'll pass over to Owen now. Owen, what's your view from the Commission on the opportunities afforded by broadening out collaborations that universities might be involved in?
Thank you, Douglas, and thank you to the EUA for having me attend this event today. I think I just start by explaining a bit my background as well. So I'm working now in DG Research and Innovation, so more on the research innovation side of the European Green Deal. Obviously then with support from colleagues in DG EAC who are on the education side of things, but just to stress that, of course, both of us work very closely. We share a commissioner, and that universities are a key stakeholder for the Commission in the European Green Deal. But then specifically when it comes to this question on broadening of partnerships, I think it's useful to give a concrete example of what the Commission is trying. So in this context, I draw attention to the European Universities Initiative. So this was launched by the former Commissioner for Research, Innovation, Education, Maria Gabriel. And it's an initiative that aims to establish alliances between higher education institutions across Europe. And it's to improve, on the one hand, the international competitiveness of the kind of networks of European universities, and then also to encourage partnering, I suppose, or working with others from outside of the educational field. So whether this is the private sector, public authorities, and civil society, which I think is something that comes across very strongly in the roadmap, and this core importance of transdisciplinarity, which I think came across very strongly as well. And then within this context, I just mentioned was an event that the EUA held recently on the European Research ERA, and Action 13 of ERA, which is to empower higher education institutions to develop in line with the ERA and also in synergy with the European education area. So, as expressed in both the roadmap and in these initiatives, this broadening of partnerships and approaches to be more global, more interdisciplinary, and more intersectoral is a worthy objective, I think.
Great, thank you very much. And I mean, just continuing to think about partnerships, I mean, one of the things we heard earlier on was that the value of universities as a sector perhaps wasn't fully recognised in the formulation of the original Green Deal documents, which prompted the sort of work that EUA has been doing in this area. But linked to building and developing partnerships, clearly, if organisations outside universities want to collaborate successfully, they need to know what universities have to offer and what the benefits of a particular partnership might be. So what I'm really interested in is hearing from members of the panel how they think that universities might be able to promote what it is they offer more effectively to enable an easier building of partnerships, whether they're promoting research findings, whether they're promoting what they have to offer in research and education or outreach. So, Owen, perhaps I could come to you first in this case. How do you think universities as a sector could promote themselves more effectively to enable greater partnership working?
Yeah, firstly, Douglas, I'd address the issue with the drafting of the European Green Deal communication and the fact that education, higher education, but even to an extent, research and innovation are not necessarily in the spotlight. So it's acknowledged that the sector as a whole, research, innovation, education, are enabling of the various transitions, but they, in our view as well, I think, the emphasis could have been placed stronger on the role this sector can play. But then it's also important to bear in mind, that the Green Deal communication is itself a roadmap for action, as we termed it. So it's important, it's a living document as such, and we're progressing. And then when it comes to promoting findings, I can speak from the perspective of the Commission. Is, of course, we take into account input that we receive from our universities and partners, whether it's through the public consultation phase of drafting initiatives or one-to-one meetings and this kind of thing, position papers. And in terms of better promoting the findings, one is, I would say, to speak directly with the correct interlocutors, so in the policy-making process. So sometimes for universities, I think potentially the natural state of affairs is you look for the education or the research and innovation colleagues in the Commission. But a lot of these policies under the Green Deal, as you said, covers essentially everything that we're doing. So to go and speak with the major policy-making directorate generals, whether that's in DG Klima, Air, Environment, etc., and then that, publications such as this, both the vision and the roadmap, are read with interest in the Commission, and to build on this, as in, I think it was mentioned by Stefan, this is a bit the beginning of sorts, so to go forward from here.
Great, thank you. Reinhild, perhaps I could come to you now. What's your view on how universities could more effectively promote themselves in terms of what they have to offer more broadly?
Yeah, I think very much in line with what I said previously. Again, three dimensions here. So one is actually evaluating public-private partnerships and how well they are as an instrument for green policy making, and particularly also how do we already know all the details of how to design public-private partnerships. So again, taking a bit of a broad-eyed view on these and analyzing public-private partnerships, which ones work, how do they need to be designed, implemented in order to be effective. I think that's also a unique role that only universities and academic research can play here, I think. Second perspective is, I would not only focus on, but of course it's an important part of the public-private partnerships that are already directed by public policy choices here. So if you think of, for instance, like hydrogen or like electric cars, so in these public-private partnerships that policy has chosen, universities play an important role because they need to make sure that what's already available in terms of science and technology can help and can help also improve, can also train for the skills. But as I already said, I think it's also very important that in this directedness, we don't forget also the bottom-up potential of research and innovation that can lead to public-private partnerships that are not yet there, but could be potentially the next breakthroughs here. And working on those technologies for the public-private partnerships in the future, and work already with very early stage on with potential partners for those, I think is also an important dimension that should be looked at, and where universities, again, play a very important role because it's these still new emerging ideas that typically come from universities. And then finally, third, I think unique perspective for universities also is to organize inside them when they want to be really clean universities, also organize themselves as a kind of public-private partnership. So that means is have not only the researchers involved, but also use universities as users of some of these green ideas here, and do a kind of innovative procurement for projects when they are themselves also users of these technologies here. So organizing inside the university as a kind of green public-private partnership would also be a good idea.
Thank you very much. And Maria, I mean, perhaps from your experience of the work you talked about earlier, how do you think universities might be able to more effectively promote themselves in developing these kinds of partnerships?
Yeah, so in our case in Spain, we are 50 universities public and 26 private. And the most ancient are the public, of course. So at the end, if you have the history of the university and the experience, so you have, I think you are more close to the Green Deal and the commitments, of course. In the case of the private ones, they are doing several things. But I think in the case of the public, we work in all the boxes that we were talking about before. Because we research on sustainability in any places. We try to improve our buildings, the mobility of the campuses. We are changing all the policies to the sustainability because we are going from the past and we try to move to the future, changing all the actions that we are doing in our universities.
Great, thank you very much. Sort of moving on, I mean, one of the things that is set out in the roadmap very clearly is this idea that local factors need to be taken into account. So here we're thinking about local societal factors, about the way that different regions of Europe are structured or organized, about governance, and about how universities might relate to their local community or more widely. So really what I'm interested in here is thinking about the importance of taking local societal, political, and other factors into account when thinking about developing appropriate solutions to solve the challenges of the Green Deal. And often the assumption is made that if one particular technological solution works in one particular setting, it can then be simply translated into another setting. So I think what we realize in our discussions is that that's not always the case. So perhaps I could come to you first in thinking about this, Maria, from your experience of developing solutions across Spain. I mean, how did you find or did you find it was important to take into account the local sort of variations that you would see even just across your country?
Yeah, but you are talking about the local experience of business or other agents?
Well, whatever local experience you think is relevant. I mean, when I say local experience, we could think about societies, we could think about business, we could think about governance, we could think about all sorts of different things. We could think about cultural values and beliefs that citizens or groups of citizens have. So there's a number of ways of thinking about what local variation means across Europe. And I'm just interested to hear what you think were the particular factors that you had to take into account when you were thinking about developing your sustainability network.
Yeah, of course. I'm sure that the local experiences are really important in the global network of Europe. And even I think the universities, in the case of Alcalá, we are in the main center of the city. So all the activities of the society are close to our university activity. And in the same of the rest of universities in Spain, because most of the universities are in the center, at least the public ones. So at the end, the local experience is there with citizens and businesses and research, teaching, and all the actions that cooperation and volunteers are really important in the case of the local ones.
Thank you. And Reinhild, what's your view on the importance of taking into account these local factors? And indeed, might that lead to solutions that might look very different because of a consideration of local factors?
Well, so of course the Green Deal and the decarbonization, that's a global target, right? And we will only be winning if we address this at a global scale. But in that respect, I do think the local dimension is very important to take into account. And to take into account because, of course, indeed, local circumstances will matter for what solutions can actually be best implemented. But we should also be able to learn as fast as possible from that local diversity on a global scale here. So for me, the local setting is an ideal element or an ideal landscape for fast learning, but learning that is crucially then also dissipated and diffused to others here because of the global dimension of the challenge.
Yeah, great, thank you. And Owen, I mean, from your perspective from the Commission, I mean, what's your view on the importance of the locality that universities and or other research organisations are based, thinking about the range of settings we have across Europe from west, east, north and south?
Thank you. I think I would echo a lot of what Reinhild has said in that, both from the perspective of not having too many top-down diktats and solutions imposed on localities, and the need to have, solutions that take into account local concerns and needs, but then also the importance of being able to move quickly enough in the transition, which is, fast approaching our 2030 timeline, and 2050 is not really, so far off. So there's always this balance in the Commission when we're, preparing work programs, for instance, with Horizon Europe, between the impetus to have replicable solutions, but also tailored solutions, and how to strike this balance correctly. I think one useful example I'd use is possibly the Built for People partnership, which is part of Horizon Europe, and it's focused on a people-centric innovation for the sustainable built environment, with a lot of energy transition elements, so energy efficiency in buildings, renovations, this kind of thing. And it's trying to, on the ground, take into account more the local needs. And this also is echoed, I think, in the new European Bauhaus initiative, which is broader again than just the built environment. But I can give the example of the first 6 new European Bauhaus lighthouse demonstrators. So they were funded with 30 million in funding to come up really with solutions in their locality, but as I said, that could be replicated, not necessarily one-to-one, but that lessons can be drawn from one of the demonstrators and then across Europe. And then also the effort was made in this call to have more of a geographically balanced distribution, which under Horizon Europe can at times be a bit tricky.
Great, thank you very much. So moving on, in the poll that Stefan conducted at the start, the section of the roadmap that got the highest percentage in terms of priority from the participants in the webinar, 36%, was education and students. So let me just ask a very simple question here. Do you think universities need to restructure their education and training programs for students? And if so, what might any new approaches look like? So perhaps, Owen, maybe I could start with you from the Commission. What's your view? Do you think universities need to restructure? And if so, do you have any insights or views to offer on how that might be organised?
I think restructure is a very big word, but I would say the EU and the Commission, is encouraging and trying to support the education and training sector into taking account or to taking into account, a bit more and taking action for a greener future and to build a bit more sustainability competencies among learners. So there's support for the green and digital transitions. It's a priority area for EU policy cooperation in education. And just in terms of some, examples of EU actions, you have the Education for Climate Coalition, which is, about communities of students, educators, research organizations, etc., who are taking action and are active on climate change and sustainability. You have the European Sustainability Competence Framework, which kind of sets out the knowledge and skills and even attitudes that we think learners of all ages should have, so from school, higher education and beyond. And even this year, 2023, in the Horizon Europe Work Programme, there's a 5 million topic which aims to improve the evidence base regarding the impact of sustainability and climate change education and then their learning outcomes. So I think, yeah, maybe not restructured, but certainly needs to be fully taken into account. And I think this is also something, when you look at polling, surveys, etc., it's something that students and people in education want as well.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much. And Reinhild, what's your view on this? Also thinking particularly about how universities could equip students with the appropriate knowledge and skills to be able to make, full contribution to the Green Deal.
Yeah. I think it's a very multidimensional objective here, where I think universities also have to think of partnerships here, because there are different types of skills and training that need to be provided here. So I'm thinking, if you're thinking of skills for research for the next generation of clean technologies here, that's of course very hardcore task of training within universities. Here I'd like to point out that we really have to think of all disciplines here. So it's not just only the hard sciences here, but I think we also need to update our skills and training for biomedical in terms of what health issues would play along in a different climate environment, but also social sciences and policy analysis, as I already said here. So I think that kind of training also needs to be done. But it's not just only in terms of research. I think we also need a lot of skills needed for adopting and adapting existing solutions already here. And that requires a different kind of training, where I think universities will have to work together also way more with where people are employed and do the on-the-job training and particularly also retraining. And then I would also like to point out again, because I mentioned several times the importance of learning very fast on how we should do innovation policy for clean tech here. So I think also working on the policy institutions here and providing also training and retraining for those involved in policy making, I think would also be very useful partnership for universities.
Great, thank you. Some interesting reflections there on what I would call experiential or challenge-based learning, which I think is an important dimension. Yeah, great. Yeah. So, Maria, from your experience with your network in Spain, do you have any examples or insights into universities where they might have reorganized themselves or restructured themselves or adapted the way that they provide teaching and learning opportunities for students?
Yeah, of course. I think in all of our universities, our students can work together in different aspects of the Green Deal. And even you can research if you are postdoc, or even if you teach at the university, you can improve the environment where you are working. I think the experience, we have a lot of experience, depends of the issue that we can talk maybe about energy, or maybe about heritage and sustainability, or even about social entrepreneurship or organic entrepreneurship.
Great, thank you. Well, I think there's some really interesting ideas there that participants can think about in terms of ways that universities might reflect on whether there is a need to adapt or enhance what they provide for the students. So moving on, I think we've probably got time for a couple of more questions in this section of the webinar. sustainability as a concept, I think, is widely recognized as really important. And of course, universities are themselves very large organizations employing a large range of people in many different roles across universities. So what I'm interested in is how can universities embed sustainability more effectively into their organization, and in doing so, what might universities of the future look like when we think about what is advocated in this roadmap? And of course, Maria, in your earlier presentation, you gave some examples of universities in Spain. And I mean, from that, what do you think were the sort of key factors that you noticed were the most effective in helping universities embed sustainability into the operation of their organization?
Yeah, I'm sure that sustainability is a concept that tries to explain that you must be sustainable for the next generations. So in the case of universities, or in the case in my university, because we have 5 centuries of history, so it's a big responsibility to adequate all the things that we have, buildings and teaching and energy and finance even, and even the way that we try to create our relationship between students and teachers and services. So I think that sustainability is around all of us in any space, even in the organization. Not only in the case of to reduce the gases, it's everything. I think it's an idea of thinking.
Thank you. And Reinhild, what's your view on embedding sustainability into universities?
Yeah, as I already previously said, I think universities should also think a bit more of themselves as forming these partnerships where they would also partner with new ideas that their researchers might have in terms of implementing new solutions for decarbonization. And at the same time, so being also in that respect, being a kind of user of those new ideas that might find it more difficult to find other users outside here. So in that respect, take a bigger risk here, and be also the incubator for new ideas that your own researchers come up with, where universities would then be kind of innovative procurer or user here, taking a bit more risk. And of course, it might cost a little bit more, but I think that's definitely a role that universities could play, because they're way closer to the researchers and to these new ideas here, and can assess way better and nurture them way better to success here. So in that respect, when they implement new technologies, don't use the existing technology, but come up and use the new solutions that are still in a very early research stage.
Great, thank you. And Owen, your perspective from the Commission on this about sustainability in large organizations?
Yeah, I think on this, I'd just touch on something Maria mentioned where, sustainability is everything. But I also think then, of course, the danger is it can be everything and nothing. So in the same sense as the EUA has this roadmap, and a vision for the Green Deal, I think it is also useful if, higher education institutions and universities have their own roadmap and vision that they can sign up to, that the student body, staff, the roadmap as well mentions all staff, not just, professors, lecturers, this kind of thing, that there is a sense of, belonging as such to this broader vision, because it does need to encompass everything from buildings to the teaching facilities. I think it's interesting to read the paradox as such between, universities want to reach as many students as possible in many cases, but then what does this mean for the size of the campus or for your IT services and this kind of thing? From the point of view of the Commission, I think we've committed by 2028 to being climate neutral, which is a pretty steep goal, I have to say, and it's ongoing about how we get there in terms of reducing the number of buildings that we occupy, I can tell you our offices are a little bit colder than usual the last few years. So it's these kind of more basic practices, but then thinking on the organizational level and having buy-in from, in our case, the staff, the universities, everybody involved in university life.
Yes, thank you. And I mean, I think that illustrates very well the scale of the challenge and thinking about how you can involve all members of the organization in this debate and discussion about how they can not only change and adopt their working practices, but how they might be able to contribute in a positive way to developing organizations that have a less detrimental impact on the environment. So I think that's incumbent on all of us to think about that. So one of the themes that sort of flows throughout the roadmap is the idea that the energy transition, and I mean, some people talk about the dual green digital transition, but that these transitions in some sense are a proxy and are linked to this idea of building a fair, equitable and just society. So this idea that the energy transition itself can be looked at and interrogated with a view to getting some insights into whether or not that is moving in the direction that means equitable access for all. The roadmap talks about inclusive being more equitable, including diverse people and inclusivity and so on. So there's this inherent tension between energy and society. So I'm just interested in your sort of views and reflections on that, and whether or not you think there is opportunity here to think about the energy transition, not just from a technological viewpoint where we're thinking about energy solutions, but also thinking more broadly about the kind of society that we want to build to enable people to live more effectively and in a more harmonious way in the future. So maybe, Owen, if I can come back to you first on that. Do you have any sort of reflections on energy as a proxy for society?
Yeah, I think I'd start just to, acknowledge the major issue we actually have with energy poverty, which for some people is, it's hidden. It doesn't always get a huge amount of publicity, but I think it's almost 10% of the EU population live in energy poverty at the minute. And this was the case ever before Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the current energy crisis. So I think this has been at the forefront of minds in the Commission. If you look at initiatives such as the renovation wave and then what came subsequently, this new European Bauhaus initiative, one of the three core values is inclusiveness. And by this, we mean, to address energy poverty, this kind of thing, because I don't think it can be looked at in isolation. We talk about the European Green Deal, and it's in the original communication about leaving no one behind. But concretely, this is one of the areas where I think people can actually see the benefits of the green transition in their daily lives. For a lot of people across Europe, the target of climate neutrality by 2050 sounds great, but it can be a bit nebulous. But if you tell someone, the Green Deal is actually about making your living environment more comfortable for you, is essentially what it's about. There's a chance to get more connection and more buy-in for the Green Deal. So this is why we have, the new European Bauhaus, or even if you look at a research and innovation initiative, the Climate Neutral and Smart Cities mission under Horizon Europe, where we're also putting a lot of emphasis on energy poverty and bringing people along in the energy transition.
Great, thank you. And Reinhild, your view on energy as a proxy for society?
Yeah, that's a really big question, but it illustrates the complexity and multidimensionality of the objectives of the Green Deal here. And of course, social inclusion is very important, but not only because of this social dimension, but also if it doesn't work for all, we will not get to the decarbonization targets either. It's a global challenge, and everybody has to make that transition, but in a sustainable fashion. What I would also like to point out is that that should not just be an afterthought after we have all the technologies developed and on the market here, and then thinking of how can we then address the access to these technologies at a fair price. I think we should also, when we are designing new technology solutions, take into account ex ante how easy these technologies can be and at which lower prices they can actually be supplied to a diversity of people as well. So also design within the innovations, not just whether they work for decarbonization, but also do in a way that is much more easy to have that adopted also by by all layers of society.
Thank you very much. And Maria, I mean, obviously you have reported earlier on some initiatives in Spain. I mean, what's your view on this? Did you see some examples where there were very clear links between this idea of sustainable energy and developing a more positive society?
Douglas, what kind of examples of what?
Well, I'm interested in if you were able to see any examples where your approaches in developing energy solutions had a positive impact on people living in Spain in a way that maybe they didn't realize at the time.
Yeah. In the case of the universities are very important. When Maria said that sustainability is everything and it's nothing, I'm not sure if it's true. I think we need the idea about the sustainability can change the things, and I think in the universities are involved in this idea. And in this sense, to less about your question, I think that the cooperation trying to reduce the cost of the energy is really important in the universities. In our case, in Alcalá, it's amazing how using solar panels we are reducing the bill of the energy because the universities are open 24 hours, 7 days in the laboratories, in the hospitals. And if we practice a sustainable actions, we are closer to the Green Deal. So I'm sure that we have a lot of samples there.
Well, thank you very much, panelists. I think we've come to the time in the webinar where I'd like to ask you some of the questions that people have been putting in the question and answer session. So let me begin by reading a question from Ben Youngblood. And the question says, you mentioned impact methodologies to reflect successful implementation of new solutions. Can you give some examples that go beyond the traditional positions in the rankings? Maria, do you have any views on that, about methodologies that reflect implementation of new solutions?
Yeah. Some of them beyond the traditional position of rankings. Yeah, I think in the case of issues around to energy, we can check obviously the impact methodologies and the successful of that, because if you change the technology, all the cost of energy is reducing. Even in the case, for example, of organization at the university, we can check that, for example, in the PhD thesis, or for example, if you research on sustainability or organic entrepreneurship or something like that, you are closer to implement new solutions close to the Green Deal.
Thank you. And Reinhard, what's your view about methodologies?
Yeah, it's of course assessing the impact. That's a very big question here, because you have to identify what is the impact here. Because we were talking about multi-dimensions in terms of objectives. It's not just only what's your impact in terms of reducing CO2, but also biodiversity. It's also what economic costs can we do this, what types of jobs here, also the social cohesion. So there are different dimensions of impact that need to be looked at here. And then you have to know whether the new solution, what's the contribution of the new solution to the impact? And the new solution comes also within a whole mix of instruments here. So it's a very complex set of methodologies that we need to still learn quite a lot on, trying to really identify the impact of that new solution within the whole system of interventions that we're having on the very multidimensional sets of impacts here. And that's why if what's mentioned by traditional positions and rankings, I would definitely also be very careful with that, because these rankings type of exercises usually don't capture all of that complexity.
Yeah, thank you. And Owen, your view on this?
Yeah, I presume this traditional positions and ranking is the university rankings, and how this is. So I think, if you look at younger people, I mentioned earlier some of these surveys, and in advance of this, I took a look. A lot of people nowadays, they want to, not only attend the best university, whatever that may mean for them, but also they want to feel as if the organization that they're part of, is playing its role in the climate crisis and to address climate neutrality. So I think, some of these more traditional university rankings, while they're important for, funding and publicizing various universities, I don't think it's anymore the be all and end all for prospective students. And I think the same is going to be true for the university staff, that they're not necessarily, going to let's say blindly follow these kind of rankings in the future, but that people want to work for an organization that is more aligned with their values.
Okay, thank you. And I can see here we have another question let me just put that up so that everyone can see it. So this is a question from Jose, who says, it seems that the panel is more concerned with R&D than with education and students. So I think it's appropriate to allow people to talk about education students. So when we connect that to what he says here is the weak connections between ERA and EAHE, are we able to capture our students for the urgent need to contribute to sustainability? Well, maybe Owen, I can come to you first in terms of responding to this question.
Yeah, I suppose first I'm guilty as charged, coming from DG Research and Innovation, that the perspective I bring is more on this R&I, R&D side of things. And even when it comes to ERA, it's a different part of the house that takes care of it. So I'm not particularly well placed to answer on this, but I can say, all parts of the Commission are working as one on the same goal. We do work, I have colleagues work closely with their colleagues in EAC to build links between the European research area and the European education area. And I think this can be seen in, these, the ERA action that I mentioned earlier as well.
Great, thank you. And Reinhild, do you have any thoughts on this question here?
Yeah. I would like to say that we should not really think of R&D or research versus education and students, because the two are very complementary. If we really want to go for an innovation policy that is driven by research development, we will need also the skills to create and to adopt these technologies here. So R&D, a successful R&D requires skills and therefore education and students. And vice versa, I think for education and students, and certainly the role that universities play in there, is actually making sure that education and students actually becomes very close to the kind of R&D and a frontier type of technologies that universities are working on. So keeping a very close link to R&D and education, that's the unique role that universities can actually play. Because they're the only ones that combine these two dimensions.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. Maria, do you have any thoughts on this question from Jose?
Yeah, I think the the students are the main characters of our actions, and I think they have the opportunities to contribute to the sustainability, designing actions in the campuses, improving the life in the university with several policy close to that. I think they are doing a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you very much. And I mean, let me just briefly say before I wrap up the session, I think I would agree that in a sense, I think there are many overlaps between research, development, innovation, education and students. That's part of the whole experience and environment that universities have to offer to students. And I think there are a lot of synergies and I think a lot of benefits when one brings together research and education for students. So thank you very much. So I'm looking at the time, and I think it's come to the time where we need to begin to think about drawing our webinar to a close. So I'd like to begin this particular part of the webinar by expressing my sincere thanks to our three panelists, to Owen, to Reinheld and to Maria for your very thoughtful and insightful comments, responding to the questions that I set to you about the Green Deal roadmap, but also taking time to answer some of the questions that had been put in by the panelists. So thank you very much. And I hope that members attending the webinar would really benefit from your thoughtful and insightful discussion. So I think just before we sort of finish off this session, I'm not sure if Stefan would like to come back and join me to have any sort of concluding or reflecting comments on the discussion. But just while Stefan is sort of gathering his thoughts, I think it would be an appropriate opportunity for me to offer my thanks, in addition to the panelists, but also to members of the working group, who we met regularly over a 2-year period to develop the roadmap that's been launched today. And you can see the 14 members of the working group listed on page 3 of the roadmap. I think I would also personally like to express my sincere thanks to members of the EUA Secretariat who provided vital support in helping us to develop the document from the working group discussions and condense and distill our very wide-ranging discussions into this really wonderful, coherent document. So thank you very much for those efforts. I'd also like to acknowledge the fact that the working group was very effectively supported by members of the EUA board, with board representatives attending working group meetings. And we also benefited enormously from input from the EUA Research and Innovation Strategy Group as well. And I think finally, I would just say it was a pleasure to work with this particular group of individuals. We had very wide-ranging discussions, which I hope are fully reflected and captured in this document. And I think the overall quality of the document is a real testament to the breadth and depth of expertise of working group member. And thank you also to EUA for having really, I think, the leadership and the vision that enabled this program of work to be developed and to result and culminate in this roadmap that's been launched today. I think it develops the very high quality support that EUA offers. And I think I would just like to wish everyone attending this webinar every success in thinking about their own response to this roadmap, their own discussions of what the roadmap means for them, how their institutions might respond, and ultimately how that might lead to a better, more positive future for all of us in terms of realising the vision of the Green Deal. As we heard earlier, I think it has not just national and European, but also global implications. So thank you very much, everyone, for your input today. Stefan, I think it's appropriate to hand over to you for any concluding and final comments before we close the webinar.
Well, I'm not sure about conclusions because there was so much said today. The only thing I'll say is that while we were attending, I got a message actually from the board member, EUA board member, Maurizio Tira. He's in charge of sustainability and will be in charge of Green Deal. And we've had a meeting recently with him, and it is very clear that we will continue our work, in this area. And he was attending the webinar, he was telling me, just to get some inspiration and ideas, and I think we got that. There's no way, of course, to summarize all of that. But as you said, Douglas, thanks to you for moderation and all the work in the task and finish group, of course, and thank you also to our panelists. But also, before leaving, I'd like to thank all the audience, all the participants. We had a very high number, and I think this is just a tribute also to the interest that the Green Deal and more broadly sustainability is drawing within universities. So look out for what will be coming next from the EUA next year and the following years, because as I said, we will continue our work there. Thank you so much for your participation, and I can only say good afternoon and see you very soon.